morning, everyone. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion, your old pal Amy, and we are headed into St. Paul, Minnesota today to do a vlog of a place and a man that I've wanted to see long before I was ever vlogging. It's going to be a real dream come true to get to see these places. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. Well, good morning, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion, your old pal beautiful Amy, and we're starting today to do a vlog on the great F. Scott Fitzgerald, my favorite novelist of all time. We're here in Rice Park, so let's take a look. Oh, no, that is not F. Scott Fitzgerald. Those are the Peanuts characters. They happen to be here too, so figured you might want to see them. Where we're heading to is actually across the park. There's a fountain over here, and we're going over by the corner over here. It's unfortunate they have the fountains off, but isn't that beautiful? Had to take that in before we make it over to the F. Scott statue. Here you can see he was born in St. Paul, September 24th, 1896, and passed away in Hollywood. I have vlogged his death apartment. He was actually out there as a screenwriter at the end in 1940. Here he is, the man who was a dreamer, the man who created the jazz age, F. Scott Fitzgerald. I think he would be very happy to know that there is a statue of him here in St. Paul, because he always loved or always wanted the notoriety. He craved the attention, and even early on as a young kid, he was a good writer, a good playwright, a good poet, and all he wanted to do was live an extravagant life, kind of have something that other people could live vicariously through, and so his writings always depicted that. Sadly, he died a broken man, a broken-hearted man. His wife in a sanitarium, his novels no longer even being published. He was pretty much somewhat forgotten. Today we're going to go to his connections in St. Paul. We're going to go to his birth home, where he wrote my favorite book of all time, and a few other places. What a great statue. One of the things I admired about him the most was he would scrutinize, agonize over his words. He would write a story and sometimes have 10 to 15 different drafts of it. He would rework the prose, reworking the words, making sure that they were as dynamic and as poetic as possible. He wanted it to be something special, something memorable and unforgettable. Now, his name was Francis Scott Fitzgerald, and he was named after a distant relative, Francis Scott Key, who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. And so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past from the Great Gatsby. Now Amy and I are going to head off to our first house of the day. Well, here we are. The neighborhood, the birth in 1896 of the great F. Scott Fitzgerald. Man who wrote Tender as the Night, Beautiful and the Damned, The Great Gatsby, Last Tycoon, amazing amount of short stories, This Side of Paradise. He was born here. They even have a plaque up here. Let's take a look. Isn't that amazing? I believe he was born on the 3rd floor. Here you can see it says Friends of Libraries USA, 481 Laurel Avenue. Birthplace on September 24th, 1896 of novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald, who is internationally renowned for such works as The Great Gatsby, Tender as the Night, and This Side of Paradise. If you walk up, you can see this beautiful swing But right on the other side of the doors there's also another birthplace sign. Unfortunately the doors are locked, but the primary doors were open so we can see the stairwell. So cool to see this place after all these years. I've always wanted to come here. Ever since I started reading F. Scott Fitzgerald. I actually started reading him when I was unemployed one time. I was spending a lot of time at the library and I just picked up one of his books. I wanted to read a great novel. I'd never had to read Great Gatsby in school. So I read that. I liked it, but then I went to Tender as the Night, or actually I went to This Side of Paradise next, and when I read that, that was his first book, I just really gravitated towards that. Now, F. Scott Fitzgerald's family wasn't necessarily wealthy. I mean, not his mother and father. In fact, he would say that his father was kind of one of his inspirations, because one day his father was fired from a sales job, and when he came home he was a broken man and never really ever recovered from it. And F. Scott said that he, well, he always was called Scott by his friends, so Scott said that that was something that he never ever wanted to see happen to himself too. He always wanted to be somebody and to be known by people. So his mother's family actually was very wealthy, so they were able to live kind of a privileged life in the early years. Even though his mother and father didn't have their own money, his mother's side would pay for him to go to prep schools, and he showed, even at an early age, a lot of promise as a writer. He was just very good at it, and his peers would even commend him. He would write plays for the school, and he was so good that he actually ended up going to Princeton. Now his grandfather would pay for him to go to Princeton, and there he had decided before he even went that he was going to be a big man on campus. He was going to be very involved, and he tried out for the football team. He just was way too small to be on the team. So he started writing plays, and he joined the Triangle Club, which was a drama club at the time, and he also started writing for the paper in Princeton. Now Scott would write a lot about excess and partying of the rich, and while he was at Princeton he would show signs of that early on. He would keep diaries about his life, and he would talk in there about how he would get so drunk he would pass out at dinners, and eventually his love of theater and writing was so intense that he was failing so bad he decided to leave. He had, at the time, Princeton was of course all male, so he was involved in the theater group. He was portraying women in the productions, and he was having a great time. He just loved being the center of attention for the most part. But once he realized that he was going to pretty much fail out of Princeton, he decided he wanted to be heroic in some other way. He wanted to be known in some other way, so he joined the military. Now his military life was extremely important because this is where he thought that he would be known. He would have something under his belt that would make him not a failure. Because while he was at Princeton, he fell in love with a girl while he was at a dance who was basically the woman that he would embody in many of his books. This rich girl that no one could ever attain, who had this wild spirit and this enthusiasm, just something about her that everyone was attracted to. And he fell in love with this girl, was engaged to her, and then her father said, "Poor boys don't marry rich girls, Scott." And that always stuck with him. It was something that he always desired to get past, was being just an average person, just to get by. So while he was off in the military, he was doing his training in Alabama, and again, though he was brokenhearted, he met another girl, Zelda Sayer, 17-year-old Zelda Sayer, who was a total firecracker for her day. She smoked and drank and partied and had reckless abandon, and he was completely in love with this, and he immediately asked her to marry him upon dating her, and she agreed. And then while he was preparing to take off to France, the war ended, and he was in a position of not knowing what he was going to do next. He decided to go off to New York City, and he got a job writing advertising making $35 a week, and he would write to her and tell her how great their life was going to be and how successful he was. But she didn't think that he would ever be able to keep up with the lifestyle she wanted. You see, Zelda was a rich belle, and she had basically been able to do anything she wanted because she came from a rich family, and so she was accustomed to that, and thinking that $35 a week wasn't all that much, she broke off the engagement, and it broke his heart. So what he decided to do next was a very life-changing moment. We're gonna go to that house because he left New York City and decided to come back and live with his parents here in St. Paul once again. Amy and I were driving to our next location. We actually found out that the school that F. Scott attended is over here, so we're gonna stop there first, but we saw this and we were like, what is this statue? She's got a lantern. That is something else. Look at that, just right here in front of this house. Amy just made a great point. She said, I bet there's probably supposed to be a flag at the end of that pole, and you can see that there is a hook up there, so really cool. Cool sideburns, dude. Envious. And we noticed a couple of these going along the sidewalk, these loops to tie up your horse. So Amy is sitting over here by a great little statue of a young F. Scott Fitzgerald. It says F. Scott Fitzgerald attended the St. Paul Academy from 1908 to 1911, where he published some of his first short stories in the school magazine Now and Then, and penned his first plays. Here's the building, and here's the statue. We've made it over to the neighborhood that Scott would move into his parents' home. In their spare bedroom, he would write this side of paradise. Not a bad neighborhood. Well, we have found the house. His room, I believe, was right there. That's where he wrote This Side of Paradise. Oh man, it's such a dream come true to get to see this place. I love that book. It just, for some reason, spoke to me immediately. Maybe it was my age at the time. Maybe I was 24, 25 years old, and it just, something about it really spoke to me. Here you can see it says, F. Scott Fitzgerald House, made a registered National Historic Landmark. So it was $5.99. Now what he did was, he wasn't ready to give up on Zelda yet, and he thought his one last ditch was to try and get something published. So he had originally started This Side of Paradise while he was in college and had never finished it. He was one of those people that just, he agonized over every page, and so for him to finish anything, it always took quite a long time. So when he moved here, up into that bedroom up there, he didn't have any money anymore. He had given up his job, of course, to come do this. He was living off his parents and just borrowing money from them, mainly to buy cigarettes to keep working. So he would work these obsessive 16-hour days, and he would, first how he would do it is he would outline everything that was going to happen, then he would write everything in a general form, and then draft after draft after draft, he would change the prose and the wording to make it sound, you know, more whimsical, a little bit more interesting, more clever. That was something that he took great pride in. And so while he would work on that, he would do draft after draft, and he had curtains up here in these windows that I had read that he used to clip the pages that he was working onto, and he would stand there and read them and reread them and rework them. So finally, after weeks of doing this, he finally finished, sent it off to a publisher. It had been sent off a couple of times before and reworked. I think it had been turned down twice. And then finally, one day, the postman brought a letter to the front door, and it was an acceptance from a publisher in New York City. And Scott told them he was overjoyed and that was basically going to leave the terms of the contract in their hands to come up with, but that one thing that he really wanted was he wanted his book to be published by Christmas. And he said, even in his letter to the publisher, of course it has to do with a girl. It was Zelda. So when This Side of Paradise was published, it actually sold out completely the first day. Scott was a success. That was something he always wanted. And even though I've said that one of the biggest things he always wanted was acceptance and to be known by other people, the other was to be in love and to have this partner that he could write about and do things with and to live out these fantastical stories in his mind, this person that he saw himself as. So once he was successful, he wrote to Zelda and asked her to marry him. And within a week of his book being published, they were married in New York City and they started their life together. Now, what he would eventually end up being known for, this jazz age life, these party nighttime lifestyles during Prohibition, where it was drinking and riding on top of taxi cabs down Fifth Avenue, it was partying on tables, dancing on tables, throwing, going to parties and throwing silverware over the fences. These are the stories that he would be known for. And Zelda was a perfect cohort because Zelda was already a wild child, and once they got together, they both saw this as not only a way to get to live an extraordinarily fun life, but to, in some ways, create the life, almost like actors, where they could create what they thought would be outlandish and then go live it and then be known for it, so that long after they were gone, these stories would continue to live on, be embellished, and to grow, and they always were. And he went on to have, after leaving here and publishing This Side of Paradise, he went on to marry Zelda. They had a child together. We're gonna go to the house where they lived with her. God, I really wish they would make something here, a museum, one of these places. This one especially. I just love seeing this, and I have to walk up and take a look at these stairs because, like I said, he was notified by mail that his book had been accepted, but not only that, when he found out that he was going to be published, it was said that he ran out into the streets, up and down the sidewalks, telling everyone he knew that he was going to be a published author and that he was going to be a success, and everything that he had always told everyone that he was going to do and that he was going to be somebody, it was now happening. So I have to show these steps. I have to show that front door he would have raced out of. God, look at that old tile. So you can see Amy and I are here at the Commodore. This was where where Zelda and F. Scott moved to when they got evicted from their White Bear Lake cottage. They were waiting for Zelda to have their baby, who they named Frances Scott Fitzgerald, Frances with an E instead of like her father. They would always call her Scotty. So they lived here for a short time, but not for very long. This place is actually kind of well known also because Al Capone was someone who stayed here, and apparently Fred Barker of Ma Barker's gang, her son, introduced his girlfriend to Ma Barker here. Let's go take a closer look. Kind of an interesting old place. I love it. This was created in 1920, or built in 1920, and then I guess it was closed down for quite a while, and it was reopened about 5 years ago. Now I think it's apartment homes. So this beautiful home was briefly lived in after they left the Commodore Hotel, once they had little Frances. They didn't stay here very long. They left St. Paul together after that. Sadly, Frances, well, Scotty, she didn't have a whole lot of time with her mother. She was raised by a nanny, and then Zelda unfortunately went to live in a sanitarium, and Scotty would go visit her occasionally, but never really had any true time with her for most of her life. Now we're gonna head off to University Club. Now this building was known as the University Club, and they had like 3 social clubs in the area for different people to join, kind of like a country club type deal. Some were for athletes, some were for socialites. This was one that, even though F. Scott wasn't a member, he attended a lot of different events here throughout his life, and he would write about in the Ice Palace stories. But he made a little bit of scuffle here one time when he and a friend, this was supposedly at the time just an all men's club, and he actually brought dates here and got drunk. But it was most notably known for one of the times when they were back living here, Zelda and Scott threw a party here called the Bad Luck Ball, in which they invited all of their friends, and then they created a fictitious Gazette newspaper that made fun of all the local socialite friends of theirs and everybody they knew, basically exposing their business. So when everyone walked in, they were handed this fake newspaper and were in the room with all the people that the stories were about. Kind of interesting to see it still here. Actually, it looks like right over here would have been the dining room. There you can see on that sign up in the corner, it says University Club St. Paul. See if we can see into there. See if we can go inside. So take a look here. Still have it set up. They're nice enough to let us come in and take a look. And take a look at the view. And a little added bonus. She said, we actually have one of his signatures here. I'll go downstairs and get it for you and show you. What a nice view. What a classy place. Wow. It's actually right here in the downstairs bar with a lot of other signatures. Okay, so when she said they had a signature downstairs, I thought she meant, you know, maybe in a ledger or an autograph or something like that. We're talking carved into the wood, and they've had it verified. Look at that right there. It says John F. Scott. So they've had it verified, and probably what it was like a little pseudonym, joking pseudonym. Like I told you, the Bad Luck Ball, he was putting out that Gazette, mocking all their friends. He'd like to create his own stories of what he wanted his life to be, and then he would live them. Not too hard to believe he would put that. It's really cool to see. Well, my friends, we are done for the day. Amy, how cool is that to end with a bang? We got to see his signature carved into that bar. How awesome was that?
Super cool.
Thank you, Amy, for being a part of this. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you all next time. Have a great night, and goodbye.